The erasure of monoracial Black girls, specifically dark-skinned girls, in the media is very much normalized and intentional. There are many purposes for this tactic, I'm sure, but one thing for certain is that it is used to condition exclusion and discrimination against the predominant phenotype of Black women and girls, as well as perpetuate the negative stereotypes and reputations that they will then endure in the real world. There are consequences to receiving mostly negative representation, and being erased at any opportunity of positive representation contributes greatly to it. Everyone on the planet with a TV or Wi-Fi connection is affected and influenced by media representation of themselves and others. The image portrayed in the media has a tremendous effect on the individual too. For Black girls, this is a mind-bending and emotional experience, resulting in real-life consequences. When you commonly see Black women and girls being represented by another group of women and girls, and often in more positive roles, you begin to justify it. You start believing that the imposter must be the true representation because it's cast in a better light, receives more attention, and is often appreciated. After suffering from the perpetual embarrassment of negative representation of your true image, you begin to think that allowing this replacement is necessary for your acceptance, and you take solace in assuming that the positive treatment will inevitably trickle down to you. But the reality is, it doesn't trickle down, it only erases. People certainly know the difference between you and the image that replaces you, and they treat you accordingly. It is a hard pill to swallow. But way too many unambiguous monoracial Black girls have grown comfortable with the replacement and essentially erasure of their image. And equally, way too many biracial, mixed, and ambiguous girls have gotten too comfortable in their entitlement to it. Welcome back to my channel. I have a playlist currently titled the Black Girl Representation Series, where I have uploaded several videos discussing my phenotype's representation in the media that I consume. Colorism, texturism, futurism, and all shapes of misogynoir are reoccurring topics in these videos, and the links will be in the description. If discussing race and other social issues is not your jam, I have another playlist currently titled Yapping Sessions for you to check out. But this is your warning now to click out of the video. Moving forward, please understand that these conversations are important, especially in the current social climate we are dissolving into, but also on a personal level to me, a Black girl who has always been sensitive about her representation in all kinds of media. And I do not appreciate intentional dishonesty when it comes to these conversations. So remember, keep it cute in the comments. That said, this is not an attack on anyone, nor a way to be divisive. This is simply a conversation discussing the truth about Black girl representation. Please like the video and comment below to help boost in the algorithm. I greatly appreciate it. And don't forget to share and subscribe. And with that said, in all of my videos regarding these topics, I have always been honest in making the distinction between Black girl representation and biracial/mixed girl representation. We are respectfully two different groups of women with different experiences. Just because we can both be victims of racism does not make us the same. Racism, unfortunately, is a very ugly spectrum, and there are parts of it where they benefit from it where we do not. No, I am not trying to gatekeep the Black community. Obviously, there are people within the community who are mixed with Black. It's more accurate to say that I am gatekeeping my image as a Black woman. And yes, this is so important for all Black women to do. I think the reason why it is so hard for people to accept this truth is because they are so used to mixed and biracial women co-opting the Black girl image. And they either don't know or don't care about the harmful impacts erasing Black girl image and replacing it for biracial image has done and continues on to do. In my video currently titled Overanalyzing Black versus Beige Representation in K-pop, I discuss how in the world of K-pop, which is progressing visually as diverse as the music and fashion they appropriate, there has never been one female Black American K-pop idol, which to me is crazy. Especially considering all the use of AAVE in the titles of their songs, the braids they put in their hair, as well as the numerous musical influences from Black American culture, and despite the global girl groups that scouted and held auditions in America, there has yet to be one. Presently, there is only one Black female K-pop idol to date, and that would be the lovely Fatu, leader and main rapper of the girl group Black Swan. Check out Black Swan and my video. She is our only monoracial Black girl representation in K-pop. But in contrast, There have been numerous biracial and mixed girls in the K-pop space. One of the many points of that video was to give evidence of how the media is more inclusive towards biracial and mixed girls in contrast to black girls, and how the exclusion of black girls is ignored because the world pretends that biracial inclusion equates to black girl inclusion. It does not. It only serves as justification for our exclusion. And this is something I've noticed go on in various areas of media representation. When you look closely and honestly at the media, it is clear that there is a bias against black girls, especially dark-skinned, unambiguous, monoracial black girls. When we are included and cast in notable positive roles, there is backlash. When a black girl is cast in a role where race is not important to the character or storyline at all, people demand unrealistic justification as to why the character is portrayed by a black girl. They are immediately against it. This is obviously due to anti-blackness, misogynoir, racism, and ultimately the masses being committed to ignorance. But another contribution to the uproar is due to overwhelmingly negative black girl roles and how they have been normalized in the media. Black girl phenotype is often paired with a character who displays negative tropes and stereotypes such as aggression, over-sexualization, unattractiveness, hypermasculinity, and they are usually treated just as horrible by the other characters. They make a point to write storylines where it shows black women and girls being mistreated and undervalued. And side note, I know to some of you, masculinity is not negative, but the reason it is in this conversation is because of the unbalanced way it's being portrayed with dark-skinned black girls majority of the time they exist on screen. Black women face some of the highest rates of domestic violence in this country. Approximately 45% of black women experience stalking, physical, and sexual violence in their lifetime, and an estimated 51% of black female adult homicides were related to intimate partner violence. FYI, I want to refer you to an outstanding resource out here on these YouTube streets, Leah Gordon's YouTube channel, and I'll link it in the description below, where she advocates and focuses on issues affecting black women in regards to these terrible statistics. She has platformed so many tragic and developing stories of black women and girls, and the awareness itself is so important. With a heavy heart, I recommend you check it out. By consistently assigning hypermasculine characteristics to black women on screen, it sends a message that black girls can and should be handled more aggressively than they would any other group of women. Viewers internalize those negative tropes and treat black girls in real life with such violence. And we've seen the videos of men attacking black girls at their jobs and throwing them into dumpsters, among other horrible crimes. And I have always noticed the way the general public speaks on black women victims. They are overwhelmingly less sympathetic. Many make light or fun of the situation no matter how brutal, and often they blame the victim. And this comes from both outside and within the community. Noticeably, black women and girls do not have the same protection from their community like other groups of women, which is why so many feel emboldened to violate us. They know there aren't any repercussions to their actions. Being overly represented in this way, while creating demeaning caricatures for the sake of entertainment, as well as weaponizing our image for uses to protest, has made our image synonymous with hypermasculinity and ultimately excuses any violence and aggression towards black women and girls, which again has shown to be consequential, reflected in our extremely high fatality rates. There are real-life consequences to media bias for black girls and women, especially dark-skinned girls. And more often, the misrepresentation of black girl image is demonstrated with colorism and how it is intentionally pitted against lighter-skinned black girls. The evidence of this is most common in black TV shows and sitcoms, including some of your favorite shows like Martin.
Thank you, Pam, for straightening that out for us. Now what you need to do is go in the back and straighten out those buckshots in the back of your neck. Girl, your hair is so nappy, Wilson couldn't pick it.
We saw this colorism demonstrated in the characters Pam and Gina. Gina, the lighter-skinned woman, was the love interest, and Pam, the darker-skinned woman, was consistently humiliated, ultimately projecting the belief that light-skinned women are more valuable and should be treated better than dark-skinned women. And it's not just adult women who they project their colorism onto. Colorism begins very early in the black community especially, and children are influenced as well. The Proud family also demonstrates colorism with the characters Penny Proud and Dejanay. And I have a whole lot to say about this, but instead of getting sidetracked, please check out my video currently titled Why Dejanay, Not Zoe, is the Real Victim, Proud Family Louder and Prouder Analysis, where I discuss in depth how the Proud family displays colorism through the series, as well as an episode of the reboot where they made a storyline blaming black girls for their own plight. Thus said, there is another form of misrepresentation that occurs often and contributes to the erasure of black girl imagery on screen altogether.
But the first black woman in the 7. She has real power.
She's biracial.
We are seeing that it is so common that whenever the opportunity for a positive black girl is available, where her race is a fundamental part of her story and character, while being genetically a part of a black family and being born to 2 black monoracial parents, basically the opportunity for an unambiguous monoracial black girl to be on screen positively in a role that is tailored to her existence, the role is too often given to a biracial or mixed girl to represent. And because positive black girl representation in the media is still so slim, especially in comparison to negative representation, this will always stand out to me.
I'm a black woman! She's a biracial girl.
Which brings us to the event that sparked this video, the casting of Amanda Stenberg in the novel turned movie in the making, Children of Blood and Bone.
Tomi Adeyemi has only just turned 25, and she's already published a best-selling novel, with 2 more sequels and a movie adaptation on the way. Children of Blood and Bone is set in the fictional land of Orisha in West Africa, and is based on traditional Yoruba religion.
Children of Blood and Bone is a young adult romantic fantasy novel. It is the first book in the Legacy of Orisha trilogy and follows the story of Zélie as she attempts to restore magic to the kingdom of Orisha following the ruling class' brutal suppression of the class of magic practitioners Zélie belongs to, the Magi. I've heard this book referred to as African Harry Potter or African Avatar The Last Airbender, and the story takes place in the fictional country of Orisha, which is essentially a fictional and fantastical West Africa. And as you can imagine, all of the characters are a variety of dark-skinned monoracial black people.
You pick up this book and you see a magical, dark-skinned black girl on the cover. When you open the pages, you see blacks of all shades on the cover. You see us celebrated as the hero. You see us in epic battles. You see us get these big, twisty romances. But when I was in this gift shop and I saw a picture of the Orisha for the first time, and that was mind-blowing because, you know, I'd never seen that. I'd never imagined that we could have African gods and goddesses. And so it blew open my imagination and the world of the book came to me. And so when I found out that the Orisha were not only West African, but Nigerian, and not only Nigerian, but Yoruba, which is what my heritage is, I was like, oh, this is amazing. You know, we still don't have enough stories, enough representation of people who look like us being that protagonist, being the person to slay the dragon, being the person to ride the giant lion. So I hope that they come away from this book feeling as magical and powerful and beautiful as they are.
Amanda Stenberg is quite obviously a light-skinned biracial actress, and she has been cast as Princess Amari in the upcoming film. It is outrageous and audacious to cast anyone biracial for any of these dark-skinned monoracial African main characters, and I just started reading the book, but there were a few things that stood out to me immediately that points to the demonstrably colorist message that this casting is trying to send. Princess Amari is notably dark-skinned. The character suffers from colorism being the darkest member of her family, so much so that her mother coats her skin in powder so she will appear of a lighter complexion. Being dark-skinned is a part of Amari's story. Since they have decided to put Amanda in this role, my theory is that the writers are going to twist this from colorism to victimizing her for having lighter skin. And that's actually quite problematic. There is this existing and exhausting narrative that lighter-skinned people suffer from discrimination of their skin tone just as much or more than darker-skinned people. Now, anyone can face discrimination or prejudice, not saying that it doesn't happen, but this narrative's purpose is to undermine dark-skinned women and make a false equivalence to colorism, which is, by definition, the discrimination of dark skin. A lighter-skinned person cannot experience colorism. They benefit from it. And that's what makes this narrative so deceptive. Lighter-skinned people have a social advantage over dark-skinned people, including more inclusion, more opportunity, and positive representation. In the current anti-Black world we live in, there is no space where being darker is an advantage over being lighter. However, this narrative still exists, and I feel like the film Children of Blood and Bones, along with Amandla Stenberg, will perpetuate that deceitful agenda using books which actually acknowledges a plight that Black girls suffer from in a way that is hardly ever addressed accurately in the media. Another issue with the erasure of Princess Amani is the optics they're creating by essentially whitewashing this character. Like I mentioned earlier, I just started the book. At the making of this video, I'm nearing the middle, but as soon as I heard about this drama, I ran to get an in-depth look at the character myself. And after realizing who Amandla was cast as, another thing stuck out to me. Amari is gentle. She is soft-spoken, beautiful, dainty, regal, and essentially a princess. Out of all of the Black characters to whitewash, I think it was very intentional that they chose this character to be played by a light-skinned biracial actress. They wanted to associate all of those feminine qualities with a light-skinned and biracial phenotype. And I find this especially insidious because Amari will be contrasted with Zaylee, who is the book's heroine and more of the warrior type. Zaylee is a part of the oppressed group. She practices combat, she rides a lion, is poor, and I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm anticipating that she will weaponize her magic as well. And this character was cast by a dark-skinned monoracial Black actress. These are optics intentionally placed in the media for Black girls and everyone to internalize. Light-skinned, ambiguous phenotype is equated to dainty feminine beauty and soft, while dark-skinned, unambiguous phenotype is equated to hardness, struggle, fighting, and masculinity. If they had respect the author's originality of the characters and kept everyone monoracial, dark-skinned, and Black, I wouldn't see it this way. But by intentionally casting Amandla as the princess, the agenda is very clear. TikTok is where I originally heard the news, and there was immediate backlash of Amandla's casting from fans of the books. Many Black women expressed their disappointment in Amandla, providing evidence of Amari's importance as a dark-skinned character and Amandla's reoccurring pattern with taking monoracial Black girl roles in film. I wasn't even aware of her track record like that, but Amandla certainly does have a pattern. I knew about her being cast in The Hate U Give, another book-to-film movie where the original character was notably a dark-skinned monoracial Black girl, but she had also taken roles of real-life Black women such as the Little Rock Nine's Elizabeth Eckford in Drunk History. I feel like the same way we would have backlash for any non-Black person playing a real Black historical person on film should be no different than when a biracial person is cast. It is a form of whitewashing and incredibly disingenuous, especially when they go as far as to camouflage actresses like Zoe Saldana in the Nina Simone biopic. They could have cast a monoracial Black woman with natural Black features similar to Nina Simone, instead of painting Zoe's skin and giving her a 4C wig. To me, this shows the lengths they'll go to in order to avoid accurate Black girl representation. Not only are Black women robbed of representation, but Black actresses are robbed from a job. But this also goes to show how comfortable biracial actresses are in erasing Black women from their roles and how comfortable the world is seeing it. I was so proud of Black girls who spoke out against their erasure. There were so many TikTok videos of Black girls pointing out the unfairness and erasure of their image on screen, and how the media has been doing this to us for so long. I am so happy that we are finally standing up for ourselves and not making excuses for our erasure. For so long, I feel like the collective of Black women were complacent in biracial women representing them and their image in the media. They failed to see their exclusion, delusionally seeing biracial representation as theirs and ignoring the truth of the matter. Before, I could only find a handful, and I mean a handful, of content creators, typically around my age or older, who spoke out against the erasure of our image in the media. And I was nervous that the younger generation of Black girls, Gen Z, were too inclusive when it came to their image, despite it being obviously detrimental. But I am seeing a slight shift, which is important. Black and biracial girls each have their own separate representation, and they are treated very differently, and the difference in treatment on screen translates to real life. Most of the time, biracial imagery is uplifted over Black imagery to spite and undermine Black girls and women as a whole. And it's more than just colorism, it's featureism and texturism too. The proximity to non-Blackness is socially more valuable than exclusive Blackness. It is very important for Black girls to always call this out. Internalizing erasure is dangerous, especially in the current climate where we are seeing attempts to erase us and our history as a whole before our very eyes. Unfortunately, many Black girls continue to make excuses for their erasure, defend it, and gaslight themselves into believing their phenotype's exclusion is justified. Beware of Black girls who just aren't there yet. A lot of the reason behind that mentality is having low self-esteem. There is a certain way that Black girls who've internalized their erasure speak when they're trying to gaslight other Black girls from making the distinction. And a lot of it sounds like, we're all mixed, Black comes in different shades. Black can look like anything and everything. If you have one drop of Black in you, you're Black. If your dad is Black, you're Black, and so on and so forth. Commitment to the racist one-drop rule, which historically was a method to exclude Black people and their descendants from outside wealth, is racist. It's not an actual rule. Please let it go. Yes, humans are made up by a complexity of DNA and the earth is round, but race and phenotype is what you look like. And in the world we live in, what you look like matters in everything you do, especially when you're marginalized. And when people see Black people, they don't think we're all mixed. They see you as Black and treat you accordingly. Yes, there are monoracial Black people of all shades. There are also mixed and biracial people of all shades. We have this in common due to our shared Black ancestry, but we are still two different groups. If you have two Black parents, you're Black. If you have one non-Black parent, you're biracial. I personally see one monoracial Black parent and one biracial Black parent as Black, just as I see one non-Black parent and one biracial Black parent as non-Black or mixed, but I leave that up to the biracial community to decipher because there isn't much grayness when you're Black, and that's the main difference. Anyways, unfortunately, the reason we see the erasure of Black girls and women with biracial girls and women so often is because for such a long time, biracial and mixed women have been allowed to represent Black women, and we, Black women, had a hand in placing them there. We as a collective internalized the colorism, texturism, and featureism projected onto us, aka self-hate, and celebrated their features over ours. We referred to them as Black women instead of biracial and mixed women, and essentially pedestalized them in our spaces. And if you look around, no other group of women do this. And because no other group of women do this, biracial and mixed actresses know that they can easily get away with replacing us and representing our image. And it's gotten out of hand because we're at a point now that biracial actresses are being awarded in the name as First Black Woman, which is extremely disingenuous and inaccurate representation, which will undermine our true accomplishments as Black women, especially when the standards and requirements for Black and biracial are not the same. For too long, Black women have allowed the excuse of their non-Black side excluding them from taking over their image, as they do ours, as a legitimate reason for why they should be entitled to take over our image. This is why when women like me make the distinction between Black and biracial or mixed representation, we get so much pushback. For example, a biracial girl mixed with Black and white would rarely try to insert herself as white representation, regardless to being just as much white as they are Black. Blackness is not a parasite that eats away a biracial or mixed person's additional genealogy. I never understood erasing half of someone's identity just because they're mixed with Black. Regardless, it seems like the mixed person is less likely to claim representation from their non-Black side because they accept their racism and exclusion as the standard. But if a Black woman as a group will respond in the same way, suddenly it's morally wrong and divisive. But why are Black women the only group of women who aren't allowed to gatekeep their image? It's because Black women are the least respected and protected. Therefore, they feel entitled to our image and space. And yes, maybe Black women are more welcoming towards mixed and biracial people in the community. It definitely seems that way from my perspective, but it's twisting into something more detrimental. And the truth is, Black and biracial women are two separate groups with each their own standard of beauty, their own dominant phenotype, and their own media representation. And despite our allyship with those who wish to be allies, that line and boundary must remain in order to protect ourselves from erasure. Separation does not equal hate. There are some biracial and mixed people who relate more to their black side, and that's totally fine. And again, I'm not trying to excommunicate anyone from the black community. Mixed people exist in the black community. They just don't replace us nor our image, and they do not serve as our representation as black women and girls. We are two different groups of women. And we cannot pretend that a lot of mixed and biracial women aren't aware of their advantages over monoracial black women and don't act on it. Just as we receive microaggressions from non-black women, the same can be said about biracial and mixed women, and a lot of that comes from their known advantage over black women. Due to colorism, texturism, featureism, and misogynoir in the black community as a whole, many have been raised to see themselves as better than black women. Many root their confidence in simply not being a monoracial black woman, and in turn develop a superiority complex which we see play out in the media. So it's important for black women to always remember that possibility when faced with passive aggressiveness and racism from those who you may automatically see as an ally. As we say, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Also, we can't ignore that a lot of that misogynoir that fuels the passive aggressiveness comes from the black community, especially our male counterparts, unambiguous monoracial black men. And yes, some will say, not all, but the collective has been loud enough to contribute to the anti-blackness pedalizing biracial and mixed features over unambiguous Afrocentric features on women specifically. It is quite normalized that these standards do not apply to black males who also share these features. And the proof is in their media representation. The majority of black male actors are very much monoracial and unambiguous. There is no denying their blackness on screen. Black male actors' features are often very prominent, whereas when black women actresses are cast, more than likely her blackness will lean towards an ambiguous side. I dive into this in my Why Do Black Girls Watch Game of Thrones video, but black men and boys do not experience the erasure effect to the same lengths that black women do, which has made them less sympathetic seemingly. I remember they flipped out when Mufasa was cast as the Green Lantern, and suddenly the collective cared about colorism, and that was interesting. And hey, if it don't apply, let it fly. But we're being honest here. Yet, even in the media they control, they are cast alongside biracial women, which in addition has resulted in regards to black family sitcoms of dark-skinned husband and son and light-skinned or mixed wife and daughter. And that has become the black family TV standard, which, unsurprisingly, black people in real life have seemingly become quite desperate to emulate, resulting in the erasure of black women in their own family setting, unless they're the overweight or sassy grandma. That spot is usually reserved for black women phenotype. And I've noticed more recently how young black girl actresses are more erased than older black women in the media. It must be pretty challenging for young black girls in this industry to land roles, because it is very common to see, especially in a family cast made up by two monoracial black parents, the daughter being played by a biracial or mixed actress.
It off. They didn't give it another season and then they took it off.
Yes.
What's the reasons for that?
So, girl, only God knows. I think honestly, I think it's because they never know how to really promote black television or films on the platform. I think that when it's supposed to be, for them, marketed a certain way as of, I think for me not being on the show and they're thinking that it needs to be like put on my back to support it through and through without the means of like, in this case, Disney support.
Yes, which is huge.
Yeah.
And wildly, important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it just kind of got overshadowed with a bunch of other projects in the line. So,
So I think people might say, okay, well, shows, they get off and that happens and, you have to move on. But I think there's something critical about what you're saying about the impact it has, not only on the girls that were in the show, but the black girl that's trying her best to use her platform to produce and showcase other young women.
Yeah, exactly.
How does that feel for you, and how are you combating that in an industry that we have to keep on pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps and focusing on the prize?
I think for me, it's like, I know what industry that we're in to just keep pushing and we keep moving and we keep grinding. And, I think those are things that we kind of just are acclimated to do.
Yes.
So, for me, it really wasn't like an issue, So I'm like, okay, it is what it is. We know what happened, but okay, cool. But, I think that for our black girls,
you know, our three main leads. That, you know, for this show to be like their breakthrough, in a sense, for being seen. I can never talk about it without getting emotional, but
because we all know what it feels like to be let down and to be unseen in this industry. And it's not that we become jaded, but we understand that this business is an objective business that we have to be objective about in order to maintain. But when we see somebody else have that first experience, and it makes me feel that way about you right now.
The sad truth is many benefit from the erasure of Black women and girls in the media. And per usual, we don't have anyone to advocate for our resistance to erasure, so we must advocate for ourselves. It is devastating that the characters we create in our image aren't enough to give us representation, that they will too take that away. This is also why it is so important to support the media that does feature us correctly and positively. But our voices are very influential. Black women as a whole are very influential. We do have a lot of power in that. As long as we continue to resist the erasure effect and call it out, it won't be as easily normalized. And our erasure not being normalized to us, the collective of Black girls, is the most important thing. It is an uphill journey since we have to ultimately undo what has been done for years. And of course, there will be resistance. Black women censoring themselves, defending their image, and refusing to be erased will trigger people. So many feel entitled to have access to us in every way. There will also be those who can't relate to our plight and will try to water it down no matter how many facts you spit on the causes and effects of being misrepresented. But this is just more proof of why protecting our image and representation is so important. It's a good thing for Black women to speak out and call out their erasure in the media. We are the only ones who don't benefit from it, and we deserve our own positive representation in the media. And I truly hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry to get deep on you, but whenever we're talking about Black girl representation, you know I really can't help it. Plus, it's so close to Black History Month. Anyways, let me know your thoughts below. Please don't spoil Children of Blood and Bone. I'm still reading it. But let me know what you think about the casting and the book too. Don't forget to check out the videos I mentioned and my playlist. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.